right, good morning, everybody. Looks like everything is working fine. Oh, it still says adversary review. Alright, sorry about that. So, let me put something in chat just so it's known. Because I. Can I edit it right here? Yes, I can. Alright, I will edit it right here. Thank you for letting me know. I appreciate that. Alright, so today, as the title suggests, the correct title, we are going to be going over the equipment review for the Shattered World. For this, we're going to be going over the types of equipment, how different gear works, how weapons and armor work, because it is a little different in the Shattered World compared to other systems. We're going to be going over how the modification system works and how crafting works. Alright, looks like somebody else logged on. I'm not seeing a name yet, but welcome. Welcome to everybody logging on right now. We are going to wait just a minute or two to give more people a chance to log on, and then I will start going over everything more in depth. We are going to be starting with the basics, weapons and armor, and then moving on from there. Ow. Okay. Alright, so it's 9:03 now. Let's go ahead and get started. So, again, this is for our upcoming tabletop RPG, The Shattered World. This is a new system. You will hear me throughout the stream giving callbacks to games like Dungeons and Dragons, World of Darkness, etc. This game is not compatible with those systems. This is just me merely using them. That's a tongue twister. As examples and compare and contrast. So, let's go over first and foremost weapons. When you create your character and when you're getting ready to go into combat, there are a couple different weapon types you can get, either melee or firearms. And they are things like long arms, which are various types of rifles, small arms, which are your handguns, your revolvers, your pistols, etc., shotguns, and then exotic firearms, anything from a flamethrower or other thrower type weapons to grenade launchers. And then for melee weapons, you have blunt weapons, things like quarterstaves, things like clubs. You have small blades, your daggers, your cutlasses, that kind of thing. Large blades, those are your arming swords, what most people think of long swords for D&D and the like. Claymores, weehanders, that kind of thing. You have spears. Unarmed is a category. And axes. So, the main difference between the two mechanically, every weapon has what we call a trait. Every weapon category. So all pistols, all handguns, by default have the quick draw trait. If you were in our stream last time where we were going over the core systems, I mentioned actions per turn. Normally, drawing your firearm and firing is two separate actions. Pistols all come with the quick draw trait where you can very rapidly pull and fire as one action, but you take a penalty to the attack because you're not taking those precious seconds to line up and actually aim. Alright. So, long arms all have the category trait penetration. What I mean by this: so we've got our firearm specialist down here, right? He has a rifle. When he aims in a straight line and hits the first two targets in that line. If they are allies, oops. If they are enemies, awesome. Friendly fire is very much a thing. This will give you some bonuses against certain adversary types and penalties against others. We will go more in depth on that when we're talking about the adversary, or when we're doing the adversary breakdown there, but when you're firing a rifle, because of the penetration ability, you have to know not just where your target is, but what's behind your target. Shotguns, similar principle, only they fire in a cone. So, you choose your primary target, and then if there's no one else in the cone, no one else takes damage. If someone else is in the cone, you have to choose one other person. Now, if there's three there, you can choose your primary and your secondary. You can do the little minute aiming. Now, automatic damage. What do you mean by that, Raven? Do you mean like no attack roll? No, you still need to make your attack roll. They do have to dodge. Okay. So, excuse me. So, in order to make an attack, if you look in the bottom right of the screen, all attack rolls are handled the exact same. You would take your ferocity. So, for our example, we'll say he has a ferocity of 4. Firearm skill, we'll say, is also 4. This is an accomplished specialist when it comes to firearms. And then, because of the shotgun they're using, it's another +1 bonus. So you would roll your 2d12 plus your appropriate bonuses. So his overall attack is a 19. I've targeted this one and this one. They both must roll evasion against that 19 that I rolled. I don't have to roll separately for each of them. I make one roll against all the targets. Another thing to remember, I've gone over this before, but it might as well go over it here as well. You can be overwhelmed. It's not like a Dungeons and Dragons where your AC is your AC. You only get so many evasions per turn based on how many ranks in evasiveness you have. If our primary target here only has 1 rank in evasiveness, and the buddy that I'm shooting at also only has 1 rank in evasiveness, my second shot will automatically hit them both. We will still need to roll only for the purpose of determining degrees of success. It is still an automatic hit. Degrees of success I will go over again in a second. As a reminder, when you're looking at weapons, weapons all do base damage. It is not like, again, a D&D or a Pathfinder where my dagger does 1d6, therefore after I roll to see if I hit, I roll again to see how much damage I do. No. This is my rifle does 4 damage base. I have a modification on it to do +1 damage. It has hollow point shells. Therefore, I do 5 damage. There are different ammunition types. Shotgun specifically, yes, similar to a World of Darkness weapon damage. I will go over the melee specifically because it's more or less the same, but I'll go over that in a second. Shotgun specifically, there are multiple different ammunition types. Ammunition, and then you can add a modification onto an ammunition. Shotguns right now are unique in the Shattered World in that they actually have 3 base types of ammunition. The default ammunition for a shotgun is buckshot. That gets you your standard Hollywood-style cone. Birdshot does a similar cone. It does less damage, but you target an additional person in that cone because you're just spewing out smaller but a lot more pellets. And then slug ammunition gets rid of the cone completely. You only hit 1 target, but you're losing that weapon trait of the shotgun. So it's very much a trade-off. Do I want to load that slug ammunition and not have to worry about friendly fire? Or do I want to risk it for added damage? Am I only going against 1 big enemy? Etc. So, that is firearms. Every one of them have their own type. Shotgun, I never actually said the name of the type. The name of the type is spread for shotgun, because again, they're firing in that cone. Melee weapons. All melee weapons have the same trait, and that's ferocious. Remember how I said a moment ago that weapon damage is base, right? Shotgun does 4 damage. Melee weapons add your ferocity to damage. Melee weapons tend to do a lot more damage than firearms. The weakness of melee is twofold. Number 1, they tend to be less versatile, right? I can, if I'm using fire ammunition and we come up against a thing that's resistant to fire damage, I can always change magazines and now I'm using ice damage. I can't yank off the edge of my greatsword and slap a new edge on and call it good. Number 2, melee damage, or melee weapons in general, are much more risky because of the way evasion works. You can very quickly get overwhelmed and taken down. You do not have a lot of stamina in the Shattered World. So, any questions on that main difference before we move on? Stamina is health, yes. Very simply, stamina is hit points, and then wounds are actual damage. So, we're going to move on to armor now. Yes. So, armor, again, to use a comparison to OGL style games like D&D or Pathfinder, armor in this game is damage reduction. Armor takes the hit for you. If I have an armor value of 2, anytime I take damage, that's reduced by 2. It doesn't make me better at evading, it makes me better at powering through the hits I do take. Which is a good segue to our next part. As we're talking about armor, there are 3 armor categories, in the same way that weapons have 2 weapon categories, melee and firearms. Armor has light armor, heavy armor, and outfits. Now, outfits are basically clothes. Outfits don't give any bonuses to armor, but they do tend to give other bonuses. So they may give you a bonus to your persuasion skill. There's a fire retardant suit that gives bonuses when fire is directly involved. It gives you armor, but only in a very specific, very narrow way against one damage type. Light armor and heavy armor are opposites. So, light armor gives you a bonus to your evasion, but does not, until at higher ranks, give you any bonuses to armor. Light armor is basically your, I don't get hit a lot, when I do it hurts. That style of armor. Heavy armor is the exact opposite. You take a penalty to evasion. You're much easier to hit because you're wearing all this weight, all this gear. It's heavier, it's slowing you down. But that's also, you're not taking anywhere near as much damage per hit. And then I lied, there is a 4th armor type, shield. And shields follow the same design philosophy as heavy armor. Shields stack, shields take up 1 hand, and then they also give you an evasion penalty. Again, you're easier to hit because you're deliberately putting your arm with that piece of metal on it in between you and whatever is hitting you, but it's shielding the blow, you're not taking as much damage. And then again, well, let me save on that. So, carrying capacity. One of the things about the Shattered World, and about tabletop RPGs in general, is how you carry your crap, right? You can't just wander into a dungeon with a sword and shield and call it good. All armor has, so light armor and heavy armor, has by default 3 hard points, 3 slots that you can put weapons in. A 2-handed weapon takes 2 weapon slots. A 1-handed weapon takes 1. So that would be, to give a pop culture reference, 3 hard points is the guy with a leather thong on the side of his trench coat where he slipped the shotgun into, and he has the katana on his back. I did not grow up in the 90s with Highlander, but those are hard points, right? Those are your holsters. All light and heavy armor comes with 3 by default. After that, you have 2 hands. What can you carry? You can put a backpack on, and there are a bunch of different backpacks, but that is it. There will be a bag of holding style equipment, but one of the main differences between the Shattered World and other systems, the Shattered World is again a modern fantasy system. It is assumed that every team of Enhanced has access to at least one vehicle, at least one safe house, something with storage space. So I may not have all my gear in the dungeon with me, but it's secured in my car right outside and I can go get it. Figuring out what to bring with you, what you need, is a part of the Shattered World. It is something you need to master. Does that make sense? Awesome. So, at this point, we are going to get on to one of my favorite types, or favorite things about this system. And before we do that, I am going to mildly rant for a minute. So, one of the things about other systems, almost every tabletop RPG has some type of enchantment system for your weapons and armor, right? They have some type of, I can get masterwork and I can craft a treasure and blah blah blah. The problem is those systems typically don't come on until later levels. You know, when you're making your character a character creation, everybody has a longsword. Everybody has a longbow. Everybody has a dagger, right? Everybody has the same few base weapons. And they make up for this by putting out books every couple of months or every year that just has a bunch of new weapons, and you'll have 18 different daggers where this is a corset dagger. It is exactly the same as every other dagger except it has concealable. And this is a throwing dagger. It has slightly less damage, but you throw it. And buy this new book with these 5 weapon types for $5.99. Okay. Oh, and you can't really use them until level 20. Sorry. So, that's certainly a thing. We decided not to go that route. Instead, all weapons, we use what we call the modification system. So, for example, when you are looking at your weapons, you will not see Claymore. You will not see a Beretti pump action shotgun. You will not see an AR-15 armalite rifle. You will see break action shotgun, single-edged curved one-handed weapon. Every weapon comes with a couple different modification types and then a number of modification slots. By putting in different modifications, that's how you get different weapon types. So, we'll use the shotgun for example. When you look at your different modification types, you can only have one modification of a given type. So, extra barrel is a barrel modification. I cannot have 17 extra barrels. Each modification takes up a number of slots. So, this break action shotgun has 4 slots. A extra barrel costs 1 slot. So I've got my barrel type and 1 slot filled. I can now pick up a sight that can take 1, 2, or 3 slots. Exterior modification that takes up 1, 2, or 3 slots. Stock modification, etc. So, say I, for example, want a pump action shotgun. I would pick up the extra barrel modification and then the pump action exterior. And now I have a pump action shotgun. Same premises works. If I want to do a two-handed sword or a one-handed dagger, etc. If I'm using a two-handed sword and I want one of those wavy blade Zweihanders, I pick up the right modification, and then you move from there. All modifications, and so this is important. Let me backtrack just a second. I've mentioned this in other streams, but one of the important things to remember about the Shattered World, again, modern fantasy, magic and tech, it's a common trope in a lot of modern fantasy games for magic and tech to be separate. You know, the classic example right now is the Dresden Files by Jim Butcher. Whenever the main character, Harry Dresden, whenever he tries to use magic, there is a chance that he can blow out tech around him. And that happens to just all wizards. That's just a quirk of the world. We've all seen, you know, old school shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer or True Blood. You know, the magic and the tech are always separated in this genre. In the Shattered World, that's not true. There is no difference between magic and technology. You can't buy a toaster that does not have at least a little bit of magic behind it. Basically, the old Arthur C. Clarke quote about how magic is, or technology, science is just sufficiently explained magic. Same basic principle. So when you're looking at your modifications, the reason why I bring that up, some modifications will be things like holographic sight. Okay, we have that in the real world. Others will be lock on or bullet curve or phased blade, where you can partially cut through armor, ignoring some armor whenever you swing. Things like that. Right now, at launch, vehicles will have modifications, buildings will have modifications, weapons and armor, including outfits and shields, will all have modifications. Basic items such as cell phones traditionally won't. That may change in the future, but stock items like that won't. Any questions about the modification? Oh, before I ask that, when the game launches, again, I mentioned that you start out with a break action shotgun and then you modify it to be the type of shotgun you want. The equipment section will have a couple samples set up to where, hey, if you want your character to use a Chinese style longsword, a Dao longsword, here are the modifications you take to make that weapon. If you want a naginata rather than a standard polearm, here are the modifications you take to make that weapon, etc. So, before I move on, any questions about the basic modification system? Yes, all of them cost salary. You know what? Let me go over salary for a second. We started to, or we did in the other stream, but let me go over it here as well. One of the important things about salary, in other games, there are always multiple different types of resources. It may be as simple as, okay, you have silver coins and copper coins and gold coins and platinum coins. It may be, okay, when you're buying personal gear for your character, you have wealth, and then when you are buying stuff for your building, you have resource points, and then blah blah. No. In the Shattered World, it is all salary. You can absolutely buy things for your allies. You can absolutely pool your resources to get a slightly better weapon or armor. One of the important things to remember is that teams are very fluid. You may have a long working relationship with that Supernatural Hunter Incorporated fire team leader, and you two have gone on 3 different missions together, but there's no guarantee you're going to go on another mission together. He may get reassigned somewhere, you may get reassigned somewhere, etc. So, just something to keep in mind. For the modifications, yes, they cost salary. You can remove them. You can reinstall them. But items can be stolen, they can be broken, they can be whatever. Sundering is something that does exist in the Shattered World. It is very much a risk-reward thing. Okay, I can absolutely sunder that super awesome shotgun you're using. I can't really target a specific mod on it unless I have an ability that lets me do so, but I can sunder your shotgun. Cool. That means that shotgun is broken when I want to use it after I kill you. In addition, dead enemies don't do damage. So do I want to take out your weapon when I could just take you out? What if my mission is to bring you in alive? Etc. Does that answer that question, Raven? I know I kind of went on like 3 different tangents there. Awesome. So, next up we're going to go over crafting. So, crafting is something that's done in stratagem mode. Each crafting project is known as a project. You can only work on a project once per day. Working on a project takes 8 hours of time. Now, just like in tactics mode, where your ferocity determines your actions per turn, in project mode, or in projects, your mental acuity determines how many actions you can safely do in each 8-hour period. You can do what's known as a rush job or a thorough job, where you give up actions in the case of a thorough job. Basically, you're going a little slower, you're not rushing, but because you're doing that, you're being more careful with your resources and you're being more precise. Measure twice, cut once. So you're making that item is a little cheaper, and you get a bonus to the check. A rush job is the opposite. That's where you measure none, cut self. And you're wasting more materials, so it's a little more expensive for you to make, and you take a penalty because you're not being as careful, but you get more actions, therefore you can make it quicker. So, first you would look at your skills. Alright, I have 3 ranks in craft, and I have the craft gunsmithing focus. Therefore, I can make these types of firearms. For example, you select the items you want to make. You gather your raw materials. This requires you to spend half what the item costs, round up. So if it normally costs 5, a shotgun has a salary of 5, for example. Half that is 2.5, round up is 3 salary. At that point, you make 1 check for each action you have. So if I have 1 or 2 mental acuity, I make 1 check. 3 to 5, I make 2 checks. And then if my mental acuity is 6, then I would make 3 checks. Each check does have the degrees of success and degrees of failure that we went over last time. So in this particular instance, say the DC is 18 and I roll. I get a 24, 6 higher. So not only do I succeed, I get 1 point of success, or I get 1 success. I had a degree of success, so that's an extra success. If I fail, again, say the DC is 18 and I rolled a 17, 1 under. I failed. That action makes no progress towards completing it. If I fail by 6, I ruined half the raw materials. I cut something badly, I stripped a screw, something like that, and I have to go buy some more stuff to make up for what I ruined. 2 degrees of success, all of my raw materials are hopelessly ruined. I gotta repay in order to continue this project. Failing by 12 or more, you start over at the beginning. That includes losing any previous successes you accrued. When we were talking about skills the other day, we went over how there are 3 types. If you have 1 rank in a skill, you're a rookie. If you have 4 ranks in a skill, you're a specialist. And if you have all 7 ranks in a skill, you've reached the pinnacle. A rookie tagged item only requires 1 success in order to successfully craft. Specialist tagged items require 5 successes, and pinnacle tagged items require 7. So again, the higher the skill required to make the item, the harder it is to make, but the better it is. Or you can crank out multiples of weaker items. Quantity versus quality. We are working on merits to allow people to work on the same item together, yes. For crafting projects, by default, no. Other projects, yes, you can. So building projects, yes. Crafting projects, no, unless you have a specific merit that says, yes, you can help. Any other questions? Yes, exactly. Too many cooks in the kitchen is exactly it. When you're working on a project, at least in the real world, throwing too many people at the same thing does not actually provide help. You often just get in each other's way. And it's, excuse me, it's the same thing here. All right. So, any other questions? All right, unless there are any other questions, all right. So, this ended up being a rather short one today. I'm actually going to call it here. Tomorrow we are going to be doing tactics mode where we will put what we learned today into action. We will be going over how basic combat works as well as running a scenario or two so that you can actually see what's going on. This is a shorter one. There's not a lot of people in today. Yeah. So, thank you everybody who showed up. I appreciate it. And I will see you all tomorrow, same time, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Um, Twitch, as you know, does update and show for your own time zone. But thank you, everybody. Take care.